It's time to put the hot back in Hot Wheels. Stick around. We're going to make a monster truck out of this Project Speeder from Hot Wheels. First, we're going to need some wheels. These will do. These are from the Greenlight's King of Crunch set. I have this base of a Jeep Cherokee. It's got a nice detail on the grille. I used the wheels for something else before, so I don't mind using the chassis. And look at that sweet fit. We'll just have to do some filing. See if we can pull this off. Well, sometimes that works. This was the first time I used my jeweler's saw. And it's a good thing these come with so many blades. There we go. You know what? Look at this thing. This thing is... this saw is so bent out of shape. Let me see if I can fix that. This is probably why I'm breaking so many blades. Alright, I bent it a little bit. You can see it's back into shape now.
Oh my goodness.
That was a lot of filing, but we're at a good spot. I had to file down the sides a little bit, but look at that match. The wheelbase of Hot Wheels cars is pretty similar across the board, so you can get away with things like this. Just clip this interior to fit in. Alright, I went ahead and primed the body of this car, and I want to use this dollar store matte black lacquer. This is an oil-based matte spray paint that I get at the Daiso, which is a dollar store here in Japan. And what I'm going to do is do some salt chipping. And my base color, I want to have a rusty brown orange. So I'll go ahead and stick that on now. And what I'm going to do is I'll take some water and some salt and apply it to everywhere I want there to be a chipped paint. The salt has been applied, and we will just make sure everything's nice and dry. Got a nice toasty pretzel. And I burnt my pretzel. Time for some flames. No, not those flames. I didn't feel like painting yellow and orange and red over top of black, so I laid out my flame design in white. And you can see here my method of doing flames. I actually got this idea from nail art videos on YouTube, which are surprisingly helpful. The idea is to start with a center line that'll be the belly of the flame, and then work from each side until you have a shape that you like and fill it in. And basically I'll continue that same strategy all across the board. On the top of the car, and we'll put some on the sides. The reason I'm using white is that this white paint that I have is really super opaque, covers extremely well. You can see over the black, there's no issue. And then when I go to put on the yellow and orange and red later, it'll cover perfectly over the white. It's not perfect, but I could probably keep messing with these flames for quite a while, so I'm going to stop here and start applying the color. So the first color I'm starting with here is just my scarlet red, and I'll apply that everywhere that there's flames. But I'll start to work in this orange-yellow color. You can see I'm taking a little bit and blending it in while the paint is still wet. I think this effect came out really nice. The good thing about painting over black is we have a bit of forgiveness on the edges there. If we get out of line, you can't really tell much. It gives it like a smoldering effect. Looks pretty cool. So I got some pure yellow here. And that is looking pretty sweet. Hit that with the heat gun real quick, and we'll rub off the salt. So you can see that base color shining through. What I did was I took a stiff brush and just started rubbing at the salt that was stuck on. Not too bad. I'm not in love with it. See what we can do later on with that. Okay, time to get a suspension built. I'm going to go with a simple suspension this time around. So I'll take some U-channel. And make sure we got our axles in a good position. Next up is some detail to fill in these giant holes in the bottom. I'm going to use some sanding mesh. Kind of rough up the edges here. Pull some off with the pliers. And we'll get a line to glue up to with a pencil. You can kind of see it there. That gives us our position that we know we shouldn't glue higher than this line, or else our car won't close again. Put some of those shavings on there to cure up that super glue. And next, we got to fill in this other hole in the back. The big gap right behind the rear wheels. I'm going to put a tank in there using this 8mm styrene pipe. Stop up both ends with some styrene sheet. Cut off the excess. File it down. And we have a little tank. Glue it in place with some super glue. Alright, the next thing I'm doing is making a bracket to hold that tank in place. So using the heat gun, I bent both pieces at the same time so that they'll be the same shape. And we need to fill in that rear window. So I just took some styrene and glued it in place. Of course, we need some rivets. And I'll put a few of those on the rear window armor. Okay, now here we are. I made some exhaust. This is kind of dual purpose. I thought the exhaust would look really cool coming out of the front, pointing straight up in the air. And also, it helps fill in those gaps where the original wheels were. You see those big, deep V's. And next, for the rear suspension, I'm going to use these screws. Fasten them in place with some super glue and baking soda. And it's on to building the ram. This 0.5mm styrene slides perfectly into the H bar of styrene. And I'll carve off some little sharp stabby bits for the ram. And glue it in place. Make sure it's nice and supported. Get some more baking soda on there. And there is our ram completed. I think it came out pretty cool. Time to do something with the front windshield. I used tacky glue to glue it in. I didn't want to mess up the paint. So I ended up adding a little bit more detail to the suspension, raising it up another little bit. I added a big old drive shaft going down the middle. You can see the stance here. And now it's time for the paint. Get our black magic on the back window there. And I'll put some on the rims. You can see they're a bit too shiny. And we'll start to paint the undercarriage with what else? Burnt iron, my go-to. We'll get some matte silver on the engine and that tank in the back. Burnt iron on the armor here. And I went with red for the shocks. I think it complements the flames. And I put some red on the engine as well, just to make it go a little bit faster. Alright, I'm going to try a new technique here. I'm going to use this dark brown. It's called mahogany. And I'm going to hit these fence pieces and the ram. So this will be a representation of some rustier steel. I'll also add some to the supports of that tank in the back, and the mesh in the front window. Alright, let's get that interior done. I'm going to go with a nice light brown. And we'll paint some more details. Steering wheel in black. A belt on the engine there. There's a little tank in the passenger seat that I painted red as well. And I noticed that the blower looked kind of silly without a hole, so I painted a black square on the front there to represent a hole. And the interior got a black wash to bring out that detail. Speaking of black wash, little details like this are so satisfying to hit with the wash. You can just see everything come to life. For front grills and bumpers, my go-to is usually a gloss silver and then a black wash. We'll do a little bit of weathering on the tank. And be sure to get those headlights. I really like using these dropper bottles with the tip there. I don't have to take any paint out. I can dip the paintbrush into the bottle itself, the little stopper part on top, and get out just the right amount. You can see there. White for the headlights, and this lemon yellow for the fog lights. There we go. Okay, next step is the dry brushing. I wanted it to look like these shocks were silver over red, so I'll dry brush over those. And I'll dry brush my metal surfaces with this matte silver to give it a bit more definition. You can see those armor plates popping. And I went over the engine and the exhaust a little bit. And now it is time to put it all together. I'll glue the interior, making sure it's in the right spot. And then I will glue the body of the car in place. I noticed that there were a couple little spots that didn't look right. So I took out this typhus corrosion paint and just threw on a little bit of wear and tear here and there. I didn't go overboard with the weathering on this one. And this is what we ended up with. I think it turned out really cool. I love the flames. I did hit the salt chipping areas with a brown wash, just a watered down burnt sienna. And I think that it brought some of the brighter colors down a little bit. Turned out pretty good. I'm happy with this build. And I'd love to hear what you think of it too. Let me know in the comments. Tell me what you thought of the build. Maybe something you didn't like. I appreciate all the comments. Thanks for liking and subscribing. And I'll see you on the next build.